everyone, this is Steve Bishop from ProgrammingMadeEasy.com, and today I've got another In My Opinion video for you guys, where you guys get to ask me any kind of questions that you'd like. So obviously this is a programming channel, so the majority of those questions are programming related, but I am of course willing to hear your questions about any other kind of topics. If you do have a question or if you have a comment, please just drop it in the comment section below this video or any one of my In My Opinion videos. And as long as it's a good one and I've got time to go over it, I will make a video of it just like this one. So today's question actually is a comment by Andre Niket. Now, Andre was making a comment on a previous In My Opinion video where I was talking about the survey conducted by Stack Overflow. And Andre says this: I love your remark at 1558. Many people I know think and act that their truth is the truth. We all have to consider sometimes that some thoughts or facts in our head are sometimes misplaced or wrong. I think that is the only way to grow and learn as a human. If something at work went wrong, I always think, what could I have done to avoid such a mistake, even if I didn't make the mistake? So first of all, Andre, I really appreciate the comment. I appreciate that you kind of took this little nugget of something that really was just kind of a throwaway thing. I just kind of threw it in there. And this is like 40-minute video, and you clearly were paying very close attention because you caught it at about the 16-minute mark. But it's a really important one, and that's why I kind of decided to do this video, is because I think it's an important thing that needs to be talked about. So first of all, I'd like to go over this concept. I learned back when I was doing golf instruction. There was this book called The Golfing Machine. And what's interesting about the golfing world is that it is so full of ego. Like, not everybody has ego, but it's a really egotistical industry. There's a lot of alpha males in it. And so you have a lot of headbutting, and especially when it comes to the instruction side, it's so dogmatic. Like, this is my way. This is the right way to swing a golf club. This is the right way to fit a person to the golf club. And, you know, I buy into it too. I bought into it a lot too. Like, I had this way that I wanted to teach, and I butted heads with other instructors, and I believed in certain things, and I became very dogmatic about it. But going back to, there was this book called The Golfing Machine, and there was a particular phrase in there that I just love, and the older I get, the more meaning it has to it. And it's this concept of garbage in, garbage out. So what it really means is be willing to allow the garbage in. Like, if you hear somebody's opinion or somebody is pontificating, don't just necessarily throw it out, right? Be willing to hear it through. Be willing to listen, mull it over a little bit, and see if maybe there's a thread of truth in there somewhere. See if there's something in there that you can connect on before you throw the trash out. Right? Before you just throw the rest out. Because typically, even though we might have an initial reaction to something that it's just total BS, it's totally garbage, it usually comes from a place of somebody else who has experience. You know, they're a human being. They have experiences. They've gone through something, and they have this opinion for a good reason. So if you can listen to it and try to hear that nugget of truth that's in there, you might surprise yourself that you can learn something really important from that. And I really think that. Even though, and sometimes there's just nothing there, obviously. There's a lot of people out there that just BS to BS. But if you do listen really carefully, there's typically some sort of nugget of truth in there that you can latch onto and make yourself a little bit better by listening to it. And then feel free to throw it out, right? Like, throw out whatever's garbage, right? We need to have that kind of filter, right? We need to have that filter that says garbage is coming in. I need to figure out what's actually important about this and then throw it out. And typically, when we receive advice or opinions or something like in this video, there's typically one of two reactions. We either take we either say that's garbage, it's BS, throw it out, or it has a certain ring of truth to it that it resonates really well with us, and we just kind of accept it. And I'm going to tell you that both of those things, both tossing it out and taking something in, and believing it immediately, both of those have their dangers, right? Because especially if you accept something right away, you can become very dogmatic about it, even though you might have just heard it. It's like, yeah, that's definitely true. But, that may not necessarily actually be true. So I'm going to go back to a pretty old journalistic standard that used to be around. I think it's not really around anymore, but there used to be this journalistic standard that before you went to print with any sort of article, you needed at least 2 sources. You needed 2 sources to validate that claim. I've definitely seen some news articles that aren't quite that way. Fake news, right? Anything that basically says, oh, well, there's this subreddit over there somewhere where this guy gave an anecdotal situation. I don't really consider that news. Like, you need to have a pretty substantial claim there with at least a couple of sources that can both verify the exact same thing happened. So that's kind of the same filter that I like to take this garbage in, garbage out thing through. It's like, if you receive something that you don't necessarily immediately agree with, while you're mulling it over, see if there's that nugget of truth in there that has 2 sources, right? See if you can validate it. Because sometimes people just, they'll say something and then they'll give you the one source, but then you're like, but where's the other one? Like, show me something else that backs that up, because there's a lot of bias out there, especially in the media, the print media today, that you might find online. It's a lot of bogus stuff. So try to filter through. Try to find not just that, but also with your opinions that you receive from other people. Try to ask them for, okay, I'm listening to your opinion. Do you have anything to back that up? Do you have anything to back that claim up? And sometimes you just listen to it and then try to go do the research on your own. You may not ask immediately, but still, the idea is try to validate it. Before you accept it or before you deny it, try to validate it. If you can't validate it, then throw it out. But if you can, then maybe there's something in there that you can take away. So this leads to that openness, that open-mindedness, the ability to be wrong, the ability to make mistakes and realize that you make mistakes. You are a flawed human being. We're all flawed. We all have problems. We all have our virtues, right? We have our virtues. We have our mistakes. So being willing to accept that about yourself is really, really important, because you can't, until you accept that about yourself, it's going to be hard for you to accept it about anybody else. And I'd like to go to this thing about this concept of a hierarchy of value. Now, some of this stuff is a little bit dark, and I've thought about this a little bit. This is kind of my own thing, and maybe some of this rings true to you, some of it might not. But in today's society, and it's been this way for a long time, don't get me wrong. I don't think that this is a modern or new thing. But one of the things that's really interesting is if you get 2 guys together in a room for long enough, at some point, they're going to ask about what they do. Right? You get 2 strangers, 2 strange guys in a room together. At some point, they're going to ask each other, what do you do for a living? What kind of work are you into? And that's because we have this value that we place on ourselves, right? We try to make sure, it's like our value to society is really, really important to us. So one of the ways that we measure that value is money. It's how much money do we make? How much money do we earn? Now that's not for everybody. Obviously, some people derive value from their kids or their family or their friends or the philanthropical stuff that they do, Habitat for Humanity or something like that, Doctors Without Borders. They certainly place value in the human connection. But I think by and large, the majority of societies that have a monetary system are judging their value to society by the amount of money that they make. And that's because it's an easy measure to do. If I theoretically, and I understand that there's a lot of outlying cases here, but theoretically, if I'm making a good amount of money, that means enough people find value in what I do that they're going to pay me for it. Whereas if I don't produce enough or I don't give enough value to society, they're not willing to fork over their money, and therefore I'm not going to be as valuable and I'm not going to make as much money. So now that, again, that's not entirely true, and that's not to say that people who don't, who are poor don't have any value to society. That's not the case at all. It's a really simplistic way of seeing things, but it's very, even though it's such a generalized way of doing things, we often do this, and we do it kind of in I wouldn't say subconscious way, but we're not really trying to say that we're better than anybody else. Like, we don't really want to do that, but we are kind of gauging our own value. We're not doing this to say that so-and-so is of less value, right? We're not saying that. We do it for ourselves to firm up our own value and kind of make that more concrete to ourselves. We're not trying to say that anybody is less valuable than me or more valuable than me, but what ends up happening is we do kind of do that value comparison. We try to gauge if this person has a more important job than I do. Is this person making more money than I do? Because that, I mean, you just get two people that are doing the same job, and if one of them finds out that they're not making as much as the other, they're going to say, I'm not as valuable to the company. Right? That's their belief. We have this monetary number that we believe that should be determining our value to the company, to other people around us, to society. So what this goes into, though, is that one of the things that you're doing there, aside from just gauging your monetary value, is you're trying to see, is this person that I'm talking to somebody that I should look up to? Are they a peer, or are they somebody that I might not listen to as much? Like, they're not as, I'm not going to say they're not as valuable, but maybe I gauge that I'm a little bit more valuable, right? So that kind of dynamic, though, it leads to a hierarchy of values, and we kind of see the people at the very top as the most valuable. Like, and maybe it's not the most valuable. Some people might see that, like Bill Gates, for example. I mean, you may not see that he's the most valuable person in the world, right? He's making a lot of money. But on the macro, when we're trying to like gauge for ourselves where our value is and the people around us and where their value is, this is definitely a thing. And even though you may not, I mean, we try to fight it. We don't want to accept it. We don't want to accept that we're willing to say that somebody is above us or below us. So we fight this all the time. Now, what I'm getting around to with this, understanding that dynamic of there are people that you view as being above you, as your peers, and also the people below you, is that what you ultimately need to do is, you have to be willing to listen to all of them, because we're all humans. We all make these same mistakes. But here's what happens. When you make a mistake, you want to make sure that the people that you perceive as either at your level or above you in value don't see you as lesser value. So you blame other people. You try to find a way to blame. Maybe it's not on other people, but it's circumstantial, or it's some sort of system. It's not me. I'm not being held responsible for this mistake. And we do that because we're so... We value our value so much that if there's any crack in that shell to those people above us, we can't let it be exposed. We can't let those other people see it. So you think about this, and if you made a mistake, right? If you make a mistake, you're really protective about that to the people that you perceive as being above you or at your level, at your station. But then you're not so careful about those mistakes to the people that you kind of perceive as not as valuable to you. Now, one thing that I want to point out here is that I'm talking about value system, and that might be throwing a lot of you guys off. But think about this. Is a perfect stranger that you've never spoken to more or less valuable to you? Okay. Now, that doesn't mean that their value to society is any different, but your relative value or their relative value to you is a little different. And so sometimes we are willing to expose our mistakes to a complete stranger because we don't place any value on them. We don't have this, we're not comparing ourselves to them. Now, if we gained a little bit more knowledge, oh, who are you? Oh, well, I'm a Fortune 500 CEO. Well, I'm not going to tell you my mistakes now, right? Even though that person was a perfect stranger, but once we understand like where they are in the value structure and orbiting us and relative to us, we can suddenly change how we want to expose ourselves to other people, and being open about our mistakes simply because of who that person is, who we perceive that person in relation to our value. Now, this is a very dark view of things. I totally admit it. It's a very dark thing, but at the same time, it's true. To me, I find it everywhere, and even people who fight it, it's still a truth. It's still, there are people in your life that you're willing to talk to, and there's people in your life you're not willing to talk to. And there's a certain amount of value that we place on the people around us. It's just a simple fact of life. But that doesn't mean that you can't open yourself up. It doesn't mean you can't be nice. It doesn't mean you can't, be kind to those people that you may perceive as having a lower value. And you might end up having this renewed respect for them, that they become more valuable to you. So going back now, taking all this, you have to be willing to hear about your mistakes from everybody. And this is where it's really painful, right? You have to be willing to accept that you are full of mistakes, you have flaws, and you're willing to tell the people that you perceive as above you. You have to be willing to tell them that you made a mistake. You are wrong. You could be wrong, okay? And you have to be willing, just as willing, also to the people below you. Typically, we're more open to the people that we perceive as lower in our station, or maybe there's an equality. I mean, there is sometimes, obviously your spouse, for example, you would be very open to them and you see them equally. But that's kind of a special relationship when you're trying to be, guarded and competitive natured stuff. So, but being open, being willing to accept being willing to say, I am a flawed individual to both the people above you and the people below you, will give you good feedback, because the people that you admire and you look up to will be able to give you their opinion from their perspective that you really crave, right? You really want that. Even though we don't want to look bad in their eyes, we actually crave what it is that they're going to tell us. But you also need to do the opposite. You need to be willing to listen to people who you might otherwise think are below your station and say, hey, you know what? I made a mistake. And, what do you think about this? And listen to that. And again, use that garbage in, garbage out filter for all of them, right? Be willing to listen to everybody. Use that filter. Listen to what they have. See if there's a thread of truth in there, and throw out whatever's garbage. But just be mindful that you have to start with yourself first. You have to be willing to accept you are capable of making mistakes. And once everybody understands that you're that open, you're that willing to make mistakes, and you're a flawed individual, then you're going to be surprised at how much value they start placing on you, because you become an important fixture in their life for what morality is and what virtue is. And then, now once you start getting there, they're going to start looking to you for that value, for that morality, and they're going to start asking you about their mistakes. But until you get to that point where you are willing to accept yourself and your mistakes, you don't want to be going around telling everybody else about their mistakes. And that's where the blame game becomes very problematic, right? If you make a mistake, it's easy to start pointing the finger at other people saying it's their fault. But if you haven't yet been willing to accept your own faults, it's only going to fall on deaf ears, and people are going to get defensive around you. But if you are willing, again, to be accepting of your own flaws, they can see that, they will see it reflected back, and then they will try to become just as open to that kind of information, that kind of reflection back to them that, hey, something's going on with you, and I'm approaching you with an open heart and a warm feeling towards you. I just want to let you know that I see this mistake in you, and I really want to help you become a better person. But if you go around just pointing fingers saying, this isn't my fault, this isn't my mistake, it's their fault, their fault, their fault, then you're never going to get to that state where you're going to really be able to accomplish anything, and really your value is just going to stay pretty dormant. So that's a lot to take in for this video. There's some highs, some ups and downs in that, and I'm sure there's probably going to be a lot of dissension in some of the things that I said and some of the things that I don't, but that's okay. Please put your questions and your comments down in the comment section below. If you think I'm a total idiot, just go ahead, give me that thumbs down if you really don't like me. But if you did like this video, please give me that thumbs up. Let me know that you enjoyed it. And I just ask that if you do give the thumbs down, or even if you give the thumbs up and you kind of want to say your piece about it, let me know why you might have said something, why you might not like something that I said. Before you give me that thumbs down, just kind of type a little comment out that says, Steve, I think you're a total nincompoop because, your hair is just flowing the wrong direction. Why don't you dye it? It should be black. You just have a much better presence on camera. Whatever it is, okay? Just let me know why you gave me that thumbs down, because I really, I want to hear about it. I want to hear your opinion. So anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and until I see you guys in the next video, happy coding.